Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll have a word of prayer and then we'll do the pledge and we'll get started. Father, thank you for this day. God, thank you for this beautiful day, the weather, the sunshine. God, I just thank you for blessing us. God, I just pray your hand upon this board this morning, God, that you would give us wisdom to make the best decisions for this school, for the administrators, and for the students. And God, help us today. We love you. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have the presentation of House Bill 581.
All right, well, good morning to those in the audience. Some of you have seen this presentation, so we'll go through it, and then we may try to expedite it, but if you want some clarity, feel free to ask questions after the presentation. I do want to start again with the timeline, just to make sure our community knows that we followed this law to the letter. This was a suggested timeline from GSSA, which is the Georgia School Superintendent Association, and the Georgia School Board Association, of how to unpack this for our community. So back in August and September, that's when we got the information from our legislators and got some templates on what to use to share with our constituents and just how to unpack it to everyone. So from September to December, our board members have been trained by our lawyer, Corey Kirby. They've been trained by some financial analysts. We did that back in November, I think. So we've had trainings on House Bill 581 and then some other literature that was given to us so that we can make a decision. They also said by December we should choose to intend to opt in or opt out in December. So again, guidelines from GSSA and GSBA. It goes through the hearings. We couldn't do anything before January, so there was no voting or anything prior to that. And we could have included reasons to opt out, but you didn't have to. So again, this is language that you may opt out. It gave us the date to do everything by, and then March 1st, all the documentation has to be at the Secretary of State's office by March 1st. All right, so that's from GSSA and GSBA. So what did we do according to that guidance? You are aware on November 5th, you had a choice, not a choice, but you were, I think it was referendum number 1 on the ballot, and this is the actual language. So I do want to clarify something. The board is actually doing what the language says. So the language says, of course, as you voted for it, to limit the increases in assessed value, but also we may opt out. So members of the community voted that boards of education, city and counties can opt out. So that was part of your vote, okay? So I want to make sure that's clear, that that's all tied into that language, and we're going to talk about this bill a little further. So on December 10th, I gave this presentation to the board members at our final board meeting of the year, and no action was taken. It was just a presentation to them. January 14th, our first meeting of the 2025 year, this board voted to intend to opt out. And with the intention of opting out, then we have to have these 3 hearings. And today is the 3rd and final hearing. The notice of the meetings had to be in the Lincoln Journal or Journal Messenger at least 1 week prior to the meeting. So on January 17th, I sent the advertisement to the paper, and it appeared in the paper on the 23rd, which is 7 days before our first meeting. So we adhered to the rules and regs. We held our first meeting on January 30th at 8:30 a.m. and a second meeting at 6 o'clock on January 30th. According to the law, 1 meeting must be after 6, so we adhere to that as well. And today we have our 3rd public hearing, so this is where we are today. All right, let's just go through a few slides here. The name of this bill, House Bill 581, is known as Save Our Homes Act. Great title, Save Our Homes. I mean, they did a good job with addressing that and making sure that people look at that and see the intent was to help save homeowners on our increasing property taxes. So number one, it establishes a statewide floating homestead exemption that limits the annual increase in property taxes on homestead properties. So again, the value of your property couldn't go as high as a cap, and I think it just left me the name of it. CPI or the inflation rate. So they still haven't told us which one they're going to use. Okay, we still don't know. So it could be two variables. They did give local governments and local school districts the option to opt out. I do want this audience to know not only are school districts opting out, there are several counties and municipalities in the state that are opting out. So it's not just school districts. And again, we've already talked about this, March 1st is the deadline. The impact on school districts, the change could significantly impact property tax revenues for the school district. So if homeowners were to receive large tax breaks, then those funds would not flow through the system, and we would have to do other things, and we're going to talk about some other things that we would have to consider. Okay. Part of this law says that I think they had the understanding that it could affect counties and school systems flows of revenue, streams of revenue. So they put an option for city and county that they could create a SPLOS to raise additional funds if they had shortfalls. But they didn't give that option to school districts. Okay, so that's one reason the school systems, I don't know the percentage of how many are opting out, but I listed at the last meeting everyone around Lincoln County, not everyone, I'll take that back, a large portion of the districts around us are opting out as a result of not being able to make up the shortfall. All right, it passed, Amendment 1 passed by the voters. Statewide, it passed with 67% of the voters. Here in Lincoln County, it passed with 58% of the voters. And again, it passed with the knowledge of systems may opt out. Okay, that's still part of the language. All right, so let's look at some numbers. Last year, property values increased, and of course, when we look at the totality of it, the totality of property taxes increase was 10.92%. And CPI for that year was 4.1. So if you take the total 10.92 increase in revenues, taxes levied would be $6.1 million. And you see that here, $6.1 million. At the 4.1% CPI rate, that would have been generating to the school system $5.7 million and a difference of $377,000. And again, these are not my terms, but lost revenue to the district. So you see our millage rates over the last 6 years. We were at 17 in 2019, and this board has continued to try to lower the millage rate every single year. Every year they get a chance to look at the budget and then see how we can save taxpayers money. We had a spike in 2023, and part of that is because we lost equalization. We'll talk more about that. And losing that $500,000, the board at that time decided to raise the millage rate, and then just last year we lowered it a half a mil to 14.579. This is the chart that every district was given by the School Superintendent Association and Georgia School Board Association to show our taxpayers the potential loss in revenue had House Bill 581 been in effect. I have had conversation with some of the constituents, and again, made a great point that we would have had to adjust this so it's not really a total loss. However, I do want to show you what's in the language while I'm here. If this board decides to opt out, this is the language that is given to us by the bill. The legislators created, not us. In that, it wants us to use that chart to show the number of years, which the chart shows, and how much we would have lost, expecting that it's similar, that it would be similar to future years. So this is something that was not made by us, and this is what I have to turn in to the state based on that chart. Yes, so pin that for me.
Yeah, what is that document?
It's the resolution. So
That
if this
you
board,
would turn in
that is
if you
correct.
match up.
That's correct.
Okay,
So
thank you.
this was created by legislators to say, hey, you will put that information in there.
Thank you.
All right. And as you can see, if last year we were under House Bill 581 at the millage rate of 14.59, we would have lost the $377,580, which is this amount here. So it just goes back to that chart. Individual taxpayers, this shows if we're in House Bill 581, a home that was $20,000 increased in value by $25,000. And if CPI was 5%, then 5% of 200,000 is 210,000. So your property would be valued at 210,000. No, the cap would be 210,000, and then the difference, 225 from 210, left to 15,000, which would be your floating exemption, versus in the past the $2,000 exemption. So I do want you to see the difference: 15,000 exemption versus 2,000. So what's the difference overall? $1,005.95 under House Bill 581, $1,282.95. So the difference between opting out and opting in is $277 for a home that increased in value by $25,000. So old law, new law, House Bill 581. And again, won't have to read the slides. You can look at it. Pretty much it just says that opting out of 581 puts the power back into your local elected board officials here to make the best decision for you and for us on the millage rate versus state exemptions. State exemptions still are out there. There are still several state exemptions. Over 62, over 65, depending on how much money you make, and all of those are available on the Lincoln County Tax Assessor's website to see if you qualify. We are well aware that a con of opting out is districts still may face higher property taxes, and we know that's unpopular. That not the district, you guys may face higher property taxes. Sorry about that. Won't go through this. I've said it already. The public hearings, what's required, we've done that. I do want to mention House Bill 92 was introduced in this legislation by Sean Blackwell. He is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. As of last week, he wanted to change the date for opting out from March the 1st to May 31st. Well, he's changed it again as of yesterday. And so, again, for us, that just tells us that, hey, maybe the bill is not a good bill if we have to keep making all these changes. And why are so many counties and cities and school districts opting in and out? So let's see what's going, how can we make it a better bill? So this came yesterday, day 12, under the Gold Dome. It is his House Bill 92 is a substitute to House Bill 581. So what he wants to do now is he wants districts to opt in, and then look, and if it's bad for your district, county, or city, then you have the option to opt out until March 2029. Okay, so he's saying, okay, try it and let's see. However, House Bill 581 is law. So let's say we do all of this and March 1st expires, then we automatically are in. And I don't think that's fair to us to say all of this he's presenting may go away and we didn't get a chance to file, and then now we're automatically in. There is new language that after 30 days after the final vote, after the third hearing, then it goes into effect, not the current way it's set up now. Also, as you can see, he also added a 5-acre limit. So there's been a lot of discussion up there that we're not privy to. So it was just homestead, Now it's a 5-acre limit. Now it's opt-in, and I'll give you 4 years. It's too many changes. So what we would like for them to do, of course, is superintendents are talking to our school superintendent to say, hey, just give us a bill to work with. But it's just too much ins and out, and we don't know what's going on. It's hard for us to explain it to people, and it's hard for them to understand. Just give us a simple bill that we can understand. So it is right now just too complicated to even think about opting in on my part if we really don't understand the bill, and they keep changing it. So, final notes. We know House Bill 581 had great intentions. We're all taxpayers up here, all of us. I talked last month about my mom is of age. I wouldn't want to do anything that's going to hurt my mom, okay, and cause her to pay more taxes that she didn't have to. So just know that we all up here feel that, and we know what you're going through. And for us, it's just let these people up here make the best decision about taxes and millage rates for our community. We need to trust them. They're elected, and we need to trust them to do what's best for us. So if we opt in, these are some of the options that the Georgia School Superintendent Association and School Board Association came up with, some options of what we may have to do. If we opt in and we see we lose this revenue stream, we will have to raise the millage rate depending on the CPI or rate of inflation and depending on the revenue coming in. We may have to use our reserve funds to offset the losses. And then when we run out of the reserve funds, what happens? We have to increase the millage rate. I also need you to know that a school district cannot raise the millage rate over 20. Okay, so there's a cap. Right now we're at 14.579, so we have some room. But if we were to opt in and we keep raising it, then once you hit 20, then that's as high as you can go. And then we'll really look at number 3, cutting programs, services, and personnel. I do want you to know that about 85 to 90% of our budget is personnel, is people. So when we talk about cuts, you're talking about cutting those services. Back in December, when Georgia School Superintendent Association did a survey of superintendents, how many were planning on opting out? There were 76 districts at the time planning on opting out and 21 opting in. That has changed, so I don't have the real numbers because the survey is not there anymore. So at that time, it was about 78% of school districts, or those who did the survey, said they were going to opt out. I do have some websites for you to look at. This document is available on the website if you would like it. Download it. There are several presentations similar to mine that can explain it in detail. All right, I went through that one. I do want you to know that this was printed in the Lincoln Journal for the last 2 weeks. There was an error in the Lincoln Journal this week that says the meeting is tonight. So I did want you to know it was not the board, it was the newspaper printed the error. So in case you see that, this is the document that was sent out in the paper several times. Again, not throwing them under the bus. This is the paper this week, and it says the meeting will be tonight at 6. So there may be people coming tonight at 6, but we won't be here. Okay? And that's not on us. That's just an error in the paper. We have alerted the paper of the error, so hopefully they'll print something electronically so people can see it now, and then do an error correction in the paper next week. Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
My only question, if we don't opt out and House Bill 92 fails,
We're in.
we're in.
We're in.
Okay.
And no opt out.
Just so that 2029, all that goes away.
Yes, sir.
If House Bill, okay.
Because it's not a law yet.
Yeah. House Bill
Okay.
581 is the law.
So that's the
as
risk.
of January 1st.
Okay.
And remember, if they're on day 17, legislation the session may go through the first week of May. But we have until March 1st.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
All right. If not, we'll entertain questions from the audience, and we'd ask that you state your name and your address.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I'm still nervous. I don't know why. Maybe it's just your August body. You know. I'm Beth Brigham. I live at 1125 Plantation Circle. Thank you again for having these public hearings. I know that they are required, but at the same point in time, the spirit in which you have approached it has been appreciated. The afternoon after the first public hearing, I shared my feedback with you, and I appreciated your responses. In preparation for this meeting, I've listened to the second hearing that I was not able to attend, and the comments that were made there. Thank you for the revisions based on the feedback. And then I've reviewed all of the documents that you've provided. Your transparency is very commendable, and I don't think is usual, so thank you for that. I've also reached out to our state representatives of the legislature and the State Board of Education, the Association of State School Superintendents that have provided some of your materials, as well as the State Association of School Boards, our local tax commissioner as well. I've attempted to do my homework. I don't want to approach this without some factual data. With all that said, I give you the conclusion of my analysis before I give you the analysis, and that is my opinion has not changed. In fact, I'm more strongly convinced that opting out is not appropriate for the board or the county, and I applaud the county for making that decision. So I've run a couple of mathematical models, and Mike, I talked to you earlier, and I said I would get it to you ahead of time, and I apologize, I did not, but I will share it, and y'all can play with the numbers. These models show a very different reality than the one we've been presented so far with the template that you received from the state. So with your permission, I have a few handouts for you as well as a few for the audience. Did you?
Yes.
Color copies are for the board, and I've got a few, if you don't mind sharing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here, there we go. Yeah. On page 1, you'll see that for the year we're in, 2025, the general fund budget lists an expected revenue of $16.6 million from all sources, local, state, and federal. These are from figures and documents from your website. In 2024, the revenue was $14 million. This represents a one-year increase of $18.6 million. Honestly, that's a raise any of us would enjoy, but we also recognize that there are some unfunded mandates you've talked about in the past, like health benefits for non-certified personnel and those types of things. When you look within the total, you'll see that this year's budget, $5.3 million come from local taxes. That's 32% of the total. There's another 61% that comes from federal sources, and then there's the change. Within the $5.3 million, based on what I could tell from the tax digest, fully 56% of that comes from those with homestead exemptions. If you turn to page 2, at the historical table provided during the first public hearing and that we saw again this morning, as evidence of the harm that we would have felt in our budget if 581 had been in effect since 2018, I see these numbers in a different light. As a homeowner, I see a 91% increase in the property values of those who are homestead eligible, which resulted in a 64% increase in the revenue, even with the millage rollback. This isn't a model of what might have happened. These are data that you provided that highlights the very real issues that property values for owners and in aggregate have almost doubled over the last 7 years. And the result, even with the millage rollback, is that the revenue to the Board of Education has increased over $1 million. This is the reason for House Bill 581, as flawed as it is. This was the genesis, in my opinion, of our legislative body attempting to respond to voter concerns. Now, as for the future and a prediction with 581, I've tried 3 different scenarios. Turn to page 3. in these scenarios, it's hard to predict the future for our county that would put our schools in jeopardy. In each of the sections, I started with the information from the previous meeting's handouts for 2024 as well as the 2025 budget as published. From this information, we can mix and match variables in these scenarios to develop a local tax revenue prediction. For the model, I've made some assumptions based on what I understand of House Bill 581, as complex as it is, so I may have gotten some of these wrong. But it's my understanding, and if I heard the second hearing, you affirmed that the homestead property is expected to be reassessed every 3 years at a minimum instead of 5. And our method of doing that is 1/3 of the county every year. So I've tried to factor that into this scenario. I have not factored in the fact that homestead eligible properties will be reassessed at the market value when properties are improved or they change hands. And we know this county is very attractive to members in Columbia County and Richmond County that are trying to get out of urban area. So we've had and Mr. Cox, you mentioned the number of building permits and those types of things. We know we've got a lot of folks coming in, improving properties that may have languished over the years or building new properties. For the properties that are not considered homestead eligible, I've assumed a 10% market rate adjustment. And for those who are homestead eligible, I've added a column for CPI at 2.5%. Those are variables in the spreadsheet that we can plug with. The top section is labeled worst case. So you will see that even with no millage increases, I've held it steady at the 14 and change. And the most conservative property value increases, the 7-year increase in revenue is almost $1 million, that total in the green box next to the first section. In the middle section labeled incremental millage adjustment, where all of the property values and adjustments were held constant again, I applied a modest millage rate increase. Here you'll see that the revenue projection just for this part of your budget was a little shy of $1.5 million. And I used a 7-year future, just like we had a 7-year history. In the last section, labeled aggressive millage adjustments, you'll notice that you can double the revenue increase if needed without ever approaching that magic millage rate ceiling limit of 20. So again, if you would like the spreadsheet so you can play around with the percentages and that kind of thing, I will provide it to you. So with all this said, I heard you say that opting out would keep you from having to raise the millage rates. As if that were the worst thing in the world. Yet today we know that we have a floor of 14 mills or we're going to lose in equalization. I would offer that you wanting to keep the millage rates low is not a valid reason to opt out of the bill that protects homeowners from such wide variation. And just because we voted for the Save Our Homes Act, that included the opt-out clause, if we had had the opportunity to change the language ourselves, just like if you had had the opportunity to fix the bill, we would. You also seem perplexed, even a little upset, that the bill didn't permit the county boards of education from proposing a SPLOST. I'm confused about that and why that option is more attractive than a millage rate increase. To get a SPLOST approved, you'd have to go before the voters. That seems like a more difficult option than the process you go through to raise millage. Please also don't say that you wish the legislature hadn't allowed the option to opt out. You may still choose. Please don't tell us that you don't want to give away local control to somebody else, the government, when you represent one of the most powerful governance bodies in this county. Please don't ask us to simply trust you and let you make the hard decisions While we do trust you, we elected you, we too are capable of wrestling with complex situations like this and providing perspectives that may get lost along the way. And finally, please remember that we are not only just the ones responsible for paying the local taxes, we also pay a good portion of the state taxes that provide the other 60-some% of the budget. As I said in the first meeting, I'm here today to ask you to thoughtfully reconsider with these data. I believe you can support the homeowners, and I believe you can keep the school system healthy. While the bill's complexities and its deficiencies are noted, they're not your fault. We know the Gold Dome is in the process of amending or not. Your choice is your responsibility. So, I don't really have a new question other than if you think some of these data are misleading or erroneous, I'm more than happy to hear that. I'm the first person to say I don't understand all of this, and I certainly don't want to create the perception that anyone was purposefully, misleading anybody else, but at the same point in time, these are where the numbers lead me. So, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, ma'am. That's it.
Do you agree with what your house is valued at, or you think it's overvalued?
Well, I think it's overvalued for a normal market. But I fully recognize that our neighborhood has been very attractive, and we've had folks that have come in, moved out of the area, were flush with cash, paid more than they should have during COVID. So I recognize what that did to the surrounding areas.
Yes,
Could I
happening.
sell my house?
With
for
land also, yeah.
Land too. Could I sell my house for what it's valued at today? I doubt it.
I don't agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't.
So you don't think you could sell your house for what it's valued at?
I don't, just simply because I think the market is softening. So I think we're all vulnerable, to that. And nobody could have predicted, nor would we have ever wanted what happened in the last 5 years.
Beth, help me understand, this 21% and 32 and 45. These numbers, that's an increase in over the 7-year period? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's the increase in the budget. Based on my calculations, that's an increase in the budget. I need to look at a larger. Over the 7-year period, so.
Does it, and I'm not challenging your numbers at all, but the fact that in the history, it looks like you used 6 years as opposed to 7. And in the future projection, it looks like you used 7
So
years.
I went from 25, so the 21% should be, like, if my formula is right, it should be the difference between the 2025 revenue of $5.34 million and the 2031 revenue of $5.5 million. And 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, 7 years.
Okay.
Page 2 shows past history, and your page 3 is your predictor of the future.
Well, I tried to make sure that I used the framework that, the template that y'all have gotten from one of the state associations, and the data that.
From the tax assessor.
Yes, exactly, and the data from the history of our tax assessments. And honestly, while I felt like I knew what the math would show, I was shocked when I calculated that in 2018, our digest was 93 million. And, I mean, when I was here in this meeting, I was looking at the far right column, right? You remember my objection was, we can't say you would have lost this revenue because you would have made different decisions about the millage. When I started drilling down on the data and I looked at that first column and the difference between the value in 2018 and the value in 2024, I mean, I know how much my tax digest went up, the value of my house, but I didn't realize that it had gone up across the county like it had.
Very good data.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything like this. It's kind of,
And I guess some of that increase in that digest is not just property values going up, it's new homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's, and that's one of the things that I could not include in the spreadsheet. That's why I just said, okay, nobody's gonna build anything new and nobody's gonna improve anything. So actually, this understates what the property tax revenue will be because I didn't boost the property values because they get reset under 581. And Mr. Madison, you are more familiar than I am with home values today and that kind of thing. In fact, many of you here on the board. So if I'm undervaluing my house and my property,
It's just
that's good to
everything.
hear.
You can't hardly keep up with it. Everything's going up so much.
Well, and that's part of the issue. Everything is going up. I know it's going up for y'all, but it's also going up for us.
Okay.
Any other comments, question?
Thank you.
Any
It looks like you put a
yeah.
lot into this.
Yeah, thank you for this information. Any other questions from the floor? Any other questions more? Everybody good?
Good.
I will recognize that these are homeowners in Plantation Point. I know y'all had a big group from Savannah Bay at the evening meeting.
So this is Plantations Point this morning?
We would have more here with us if they didn't have work obligations. But we do support Beth, and we do support Ogden with us.
We do appreciate,
And we appreciate the work and the research that she's put into this as well.
absolutely.
As well as what you all have too. It looks like you all have really done your due diligence as well. And I really hate that we couldn't do some of this earlier before January, but I know that that was dictated by the bill.
And we have another lifelong educator here.
Yes.
We do appreciate you being here. We appreciate this information, and like I said, we always encourage the public's input. And as you mentioned before, we try to be very transparent with everything. You know, we want what's best for the school system, and at the same time trying to do what's best for the county. So we appreciate you being here.
When will y'all vote?
The meeting will be Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, our next board meeting is Tuesday. No other questions, and I just need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we
Motion by
adjourn.
Mr. Madison, second by Mr. Moncrief. Thank you all very much.